Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride. Looking to scale or launch your supplement or skincare brand? Eagle Labs Incorporated, based in Florida, offers full-service NSF-certified contract manufacturing of capsules, tablets, powders, liquids, gummies, and lotions. All of their manufacturing takes place in the USA. From R&D and formulation to packaging and fulfillment, Eagle Labs provides scalable, high-quality production that meets FDA and NSF standards. To learn more, contact Michael Law, Chief Commercial Officer at Eagle Labs at michael.law@eaglelabsinc.com, EAGLELABSINC, Michael Law, eaglelabs.com, or text him at 203-242-6417. Today's show is sponsored by Retail and Response. You've heard it a million times on this podcast. It's not about getting your product on the retail shelf. It's about moving product off the shelf and hitting the retailer's sales velocity hurdles fast. Otherwise, they're going to begin the discontinuation process. Trust me. A slow sales start can be fatal to your brand. You need consumers coming in seeking your brand. You know, the one they heard about on radio or saw on TV. If you think radio or TV advertising is too expensive, you need to speak with our friends at Retail and Response. With over 30 years helping drive hundreds of millions of dollars of sales for their clients, Retail and Response can get your brand on radio and TV for pennies on the dollar. Check them out at retailandresponse.com. That's retailandresponse.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the most recent episode of Road to Retail. And I'm joined here by my good friend, Bruce Montgomery. Bruce, welcome and glad to see you, my friend.
Tracy, how are you today?
Doing fantastic. I'm really excited about this episode. This is going to be really good. So tell us a little bit about who we have today, Bruce.
Well, folks, today we're joined by David Simnick, who's the co-founder and CEO of Soapbox, a mission-driven personal cleansing and hair care brand, which David's going to tell us about here in a few minutes. But David, before we jump in, welcome. Thank you for the time today. And why don't you give the group a little background of what you were doing before you got to Soapbox? Then we'll talk extensively about Soapbox. Your background is quite unique.
Yeah. First and foremost, Tracy and Bruce, it's an honor to be here. I have a very non-traditional path to CPG. Also parts of that journey are no longer here anymore. So We started Soapbox because I worked for the United States Agency for International Development as a subcontractor. And while doing a bunch of home office work here in Washington, D.C., I just got to see that there was a lot of focus on water and there was growing focus on sanitation, but there really wasn't a lot of focus on hygiene. And oftentimes in international development work, that all those efforts are acronymed into what's called WASH, but water, sanitation, and hygiene. And I just really felt like this growing model back in 2008, 2009, 2010, of these one-for-one companies could be used to really solve this problem. So Soapbox started with, hey, we have a huge mission, and there's a problem on the actual development side. And then, I was 22 at the time and just out of college, and I was like, what do I have to lose? Like I'll start this company called Soapbox with my best friends and start selling in farmers markets and just see how far we can go. And I remember calling up my best friend. Him and I were Boy Scouts together. We were Eagle Scouts together, born and raised outside Chicago, about as Leave It to Beaver as you could get. And I call him up and I'm like, hey, we're going to start a personal care company called Soapbox. And every time someone buys one of our products, we got to donate a bar of soap. And he was like, awesome. He's like, sounds like this is already a marketplace that's been spoken for. I don't know if you know these small companies called Procter and Gamble or L'Oreal or Unilever, but this has been done. And I was like, yeah, well, not with the mission element. And what's the worst that can happen? We're early in our 20s and we'll figure out how to make soap and just see how far we can get. And then I went back and alumni audited a class on entrepreneurship because my major was more or less economics, and I wanted a couple other people a part of this, and Dan Dahl joined us, and Stephanie Apia joined us. So there was like 4 scrappy, did not know anything, young 20-year-olds who had 0 experience in consumer that launched this brand. And it was after begging, pleading, calling, emailing, showing up unannounced at their headquarters, did Whole Foods finally bring us into a region. And then one region went to another and another and another and another, and we just kept on growing. And the reason why we were selling so much product is because we would demo. The packaging was awful. Like Bruce Tracy could not tell you how bad. Like you would have to go out of your way to make as bad a packaging as we did. We put the kids' faces that we were serving on the front of the bars, which like some people asked us, like, is this like a Soylent Green of soap? Like what do you like? This is so we just is bad. So
or
many
was it
decisions.
or was it like the old milk cartons, the missing kids?
Yeah, right. Like it's all of it's awful. Did not have any RTBs or reasons to believe, did not tell what the product was, just sat on the shelf with, these kids staring at you. So not wonderful, right? So the second iteration was not too much better than the first. And then the third iteration was, it's just so it took about, I'm just gonna fast forward really quick. We got into all these major retailers. We got into Target, we got into Walmart, and then as soon as we got in, we fell out because we would get on the shelf and like the buyer's like, I don't think I've ever seen a product do this bad. And and it was with the noblest of intentions. But man, we just failed at every turn. And we just refused to give up. But thankfully, we had these family offices as investors that were footing all these mistakes or footing the bills for all these mistakes, and they were not willing to give up. So we had this beautiful ecosystem of the mission really led the way, and we just kept on building. And it wasn't until like 2016 that we were like, oh man, like we are not doing well. And we worked with Anthem. Unfortunately, they no longer exist. This amazing marketing agency in New York. And we used actual focus groups and we used actual mood boards and territorial expansion in terms of our packaging. And then we went and relaunched the whole brand. And in 2018, we immediately knew we actually were starting to cook with oil, like instead of trying to rub two sticks together. And that's when things started getting a lot more fun in terms of building and being able to donate so many bars of soap. Today, we're quickly approaching 50 million bars donated. We sell in practically every major retailer in the United States: Walmart, Target, Amazon, Meijer, Kroger, CVS, Wegmans, every household division, Winco, you name it, we sell there. We also sell in Canada, the UK, and the mission element has always been, well, how do we not just take care of our international partners, but how do we also take care of our domestic partners? And a lot of people don't realize that food stamps don't cover hygiene items. So one of the most requested items is soap, especially in homeless shelters and or food pantries. Because like you donate a winter coat and that takes care of a client all season long. Whereas if they have a shower program, you have to consistently replenish on a daily basis all the amenities that are being given to those clients. So we have a very serious mission that we try to address every day. And the only way that we can fuel trying to solve that problem is by making thoughtfully crafted, clean beauty products that people really love. And as you guys know, it's incredibly challenging. Like we're sub 100 million, but we're quickly approaching that in terms of revenue, and it is terrifying going to battle every day with these multi-conglomerate massive behemoths. But we have this mission, and we believe it's worth fighting for, and our customers love us, and we invite them to participate in that mission because they make it all possible.
That's awesome.
So, David, you kind of covered a lot there. So before we move on to dig a little deeper into the mission, tell us a little bit in our pre-call. I want to let you tell it, not me. Tell us a little bit about the visit you got from your landlord.
Well, I was going to make a joke earlier that I was just like, "Oh, we covered all the ground. Podcast over. All right, here we go." But yeah, in the early days, oh man, in the early days, I first started making soap in my college kitchen. And my landlord thought I was making meth. Um, no, I mean, really, I like he, walked over and was just, and looks wildly suspicious. And I can send you a photo of this, but yeah, looks straight out of Breaking Bad. So he was just like, "I'm here to inspect the lights," was like one week. And then the next week was, "I'm here to look at the plumbing." And like, we had excellent service by our landlord, but he was just trying to make sure that I wasn't running a drug cartel out of his house.
That's
All right. Well, that's hilarious. Tracy, let's push in a little more on the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. So, mission-driven brands can be both powerful, but sometimes, potentially off-putting to people. So, tell us a little bit about the pros and cons, and maybe watch out for our audience about mission-driven brands.
I would say the biggest feedback I would give to any of your listeners, especially brand operators, whether at the beginning of their journey or they're running a huge brand within one of the biggest CPG companies on the planet, the mission needs to make sense with the brand.
Mhm.
So, look, I think so many charities out there deserve support, and they should focus more on uh, their actual operational efforts instead of fundraising. But like if you sell snacks, for example, and now all of a sudden you're going to support some type of cancer research, that doesn't necessarily like that's a big the people who really are concerned about that diagnosis will potentially support it, but that doesn't necessarily really fit in terms of the eyes or the hearts of a lot of consumers who are buying that item. So I usually find that when that mission or purpose can reinforce the quality of that good, when you think about, oh, that makes more sense because this product donates what it sells, or this product in itself, gives access or allows me to feel clean and restore my dignity, and or help prevent various diseases or viruses or whatever it might be. Like that makes sense. So one of the examples I use that I think is so well done is Everlane. So Everlane's a clothing company. The thing that is their mission is that they have radical transparency throughout their whole supply chain. So they can legit tell their consumers, they're like, yes, our cashmere sweater, you can trace it all the way back to the seed. And at no point was there coerced or forced labor in making this garment for you. Uh, and that's really interesting, right? Because you're signaling to the consumer, we are a better company, but you're also signaling to the consumer, it's a better garment.
Right.
And if you can do two of those things, and that's where, like, look, Soapbox doesn't necessarily, I think, have a wrong, like, it's not as perfect as that mission is. Um, it's a good mission, right? It's one where even if consumers were not aware of the give back that Soapbox does, and they were like, look, I just love your products, they were still enabling that change to take place in, for someone down the street at the local food pantry or around the world through one of the various efforts that we work with is 65 countries and various 501(c)(3) partners. But all that being said, like, I think brand managers need to be very careful about what is the actual cause and what is the signaling that we have to the consumer about the good that we do. And then one other point that I just want to be, vulnerable and also transparent with your listeners. We know for a fact that people don't buy, most consumers do not buy us first time because of the mission. People buy us because we're a better shampoo. Like, we have cleaner ingredients, we have better efficacy, we're on promo at that time, at that particular retailer, whatever it might be. Like, that's the reason why people buy us the first time. The fragrances are phenomenal. The reason why we have the best in class loyalty of our whole competitive set, and we did a gigantic study with Boston Consulting Group that proved that, is because of the mission. So what we know is that the vast majority of our consumers come into the brand because we make a better product. What we know then is that a lot of them stay and have higher loyalty than our competitors because we make a great product that also has a mission. So understanding where the mission comes into play, and how it reinforces the stickiness of the brand, I think is incredibly important as a brand manager. Because if you miss that sequence and you place the mission as more of the top of funnel, let's capture people, I think you're gonna be disappointed with the results.
Right. Good point. Bruce?
Interesting. So I just made a note here that my idea for an Ozempic Oreo promo probably isn't a good one, so I'm going to scratch that. So David, you touched on this a tiny bit. In any competitive category, differentiation is critical, and you just drove home the point that most people buy the product because it works, and the mission is maybe secondary, but even when they're buying the product, they're helping even if they don't know it. But can you speak to the point of difference? You mentioned clean ingredients that kind of makes your product perform. Let's divorce ourselves from the mission for a moment and just talk about the ingredients that makes when that man or woman or child lathers up with your shampoo or soap products that they're different, they're better.
First and foremost, the Ozempic Oreo, that's hilarious, and I hope it doesn't offend anyone.
I'm going to edit that out, David.
Really? No,
No,
it's
I'm
so
not.
good.
I'm not.
Okay, all right. It is a really good joke. And honestly, Dan and I, my co-founder, the remaining co-founder of the four original, we often joke about how if we would have started a 1-for-1, instead of it doing good, it did bad, that would have gone viral, just because people would have bought things like, so for example, like every time you buy this, we go chop a tree down. Unfortunately, that would take off. Like people would be like, ah, they wouldn't continue buying it, but they would buy it one time because they were just like, I just want to see if this happens. Um, we're never doing that, by the way. We just talked about how uh, you know, perverse incentives sometimes
You
could
guys
draw.
would do the reverse for every bottle of soap sold. You would not go throw a bottle into the ocean,
Yeah, well, actually, so the idea was like one for bad, right?
right?
So
Right.
like it's just like, like, hey, you buy this and we're gonna make one of our interns like eat a whole bowl of cottage cheese, right? So like, and we'll send you the Vimeo with a password. Like we were just like, we're like, yeah, I wonder if, and this was like early days of us just like throwing stuff against the wall. That would work, right? Unfortunately, I hate to say it, that would absolutely work. Like people would buy that, but it would just be like like Spencer's gift stores, way back when in terms of like tchotchkes where people would be like, yeah, that's fun. Let's buy that once. Let's not do that again. I can't stand
Yeah.
to watch intern Tim eat any more cottage cheese. So
So as we stop torturing interns, tell us a little about your product design and your clean ingredients.
we thankfully work with a handful of chemists, and we really try to push the envelope at an intersection of three different major trends. It is, in our opinion, it is no longer novel to be natural, right? Like most of the brands in our space, of which the areas that we compete in are hair care, the vast majority of our business is hair care. And we outperform against huge competitors. So that is something that like I am ever watchful of because we have such a competitive industry and things change so fast. But it is very humbling to see that like, hey, something that started in my college kitchen is beating out, billion-plus-dollar brands. But we focus on hair care, on personal care, and skin care. Those are really the three that we play in. We also make a phenomenal deodorant, but we have no desire to run in to the DO category right now because it's just straight up bloodbath. Um, but essentially, we work with all these different chemists to have natural, clean, effective ingredients. We also have a red line on. We don't put harsh sulfates. We don't put parabens. We don't put EDTA. We don't put silicone. We don't put phthalates. We don't put dyes or colorants or any of that. Like all the stuff that you don't need in your personal care, we just take out. The next thing that we try to do is we test and test and test through various different internal consumer groups, internal team groups, and then a broader consumer test group just to see, do we have efficacy right? Um, so one of the things that's really interesting is if you look at all our reviews on various different platforms, we have phenomenal reviews. And it's because we have this marriage between it's clean, but it works. And then finally, that last major trend is there a purpose? So I think a lot of people ask themselves, like, if I have to consume, how does my consumption make the world a better place? Or job to be done is how do I feel less guilty about this consumption?
Right.
So we really look at our brand as like these three major trends coming together. And the other thing that we really try to focus on is how can we be affordable? Because we believe, Bruce and Tracy, that Soapbox's mission is everyone could be a philanthropist. You don't have to be a billionaire or a millionaire to be a philanthropist. You just have to change the shampoo you buy.
It's very true.
Yeah, that's really
And
cool.
and that's our goal, right? So like I mentioned this earlier, and I really genuinely mean this. Like our consumer is making the difference, and that's why on the back of each and every one of our items is something called the Hope Code. So we were one of the first one-for-one brands to do this, but essentially this is the unique code, not on a production run or a batch, or this is unique for this one specific item. And you can take that to our website and punch it in and see exactly where that other one for one went. So did it go to my local shelter, or did it go to our efforts in Eastern India with Rotary International, where we're providing and expanding wash access to a bunch of primary school children?
So,
So
folks,
yeah,
so
go
folks,
ahead.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry, David. So, folks, David held up, for those of you listening only, David held up a bottle, and on the back of the bottle was a code, and this is the Hope code he just explained. So, if you buy something from Soapbox, this database they have will say exactly where your purchase is positively impacting something somewhere.
You got it.
Excellent.
100%.
That's awesome.
So okay, David, now we're going to dig into the nuts and bolts of the retail side of the house, which is Tracy's Ballywick. Tracy?
Absolutely. So as you started to grow the brand, what signs did you see that told you, hey, we're ready to go to brick and mortar retail?
Tracy, let me emphasize this again. Let Soapbox be a lesson to all your listeners of what not to do.
Okay.
Guys, we just kept failing forward.
That's the most impactful advice you can give. Here's what not to do. We love that.
Yeah. Sell-through was never strong in any store that we had. People always loved us and they loved the brand and people wanted it to work. So buyers were like, oh my gosh, this is great. You know, da, 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 da. And we'd get in and they'd be like, this is awesome. So we just consistently failed forward. And the other thing is that we weren't a digitally native brand. You know, we didn't have this huge online community that we could galvanize and push, you know, newsletters or text messages or any type of communication or just having enough awareness. So we always started in retail.
Wow.
So what I would say is, look, the thing that we should have done and the thing that we do now is Soapbox is incredibly careful in launching with new retailers. And we know for a fact that if we launch hair care, because we have so much, you know, we're still an emerging brand. We still have, compared to, you know, Pantene or Tresemme, we have significantly lower household awareness. But we know that in a wide variety of different retailers and different channels, when we launch hair care in those shelves, the immediate velocity is incredibly strong. And then we support it through all the things that we've realized in mass and food and drug and specialty and club. And how do you wrap around and have a fast start campaign? So essentially, what I would say to, you know, early operators or entrepreneurs, or hey, you just came, you know, you're now in consumer product goods and you're listening to this amazing podcast, which they made an unfortunate decision of asking me to be a guest, which hopefully you guys will get over this blight. But anyways, what I would suggest to you is understand your hero products. And when you are talking with a new retail partner or a potential retail partner, put yourself in their shoes. What are the things that they are trying to accomplish? And oftentimes, physical retail is a zero-sum game, right? For your brand to come in, another brand needs to go out.
Yep.
So what are you offering that merchant, right? Are you offering better margin? Are you offering a differentiated product that brings a new consumer into their door? Does your brand have enough awareness and or do you have a big enough community that you can increase the traffic to their category? Like and then I think one of the things that I usually tell early CPG entrepreneurs is if you put yourself in the merchant's shoes, the conversation becomes one of partnership and not just this is what I want from my brand.
Great advice.
And if you can, oh, thank you, Tracy. It took years to get here, and also we've hired much wiser people than me that'll hit me over the head with this. You know, the advice that you hear me saying was beaten in. But essentially, what the analogy that I often use for early entrepreneurs in this space is like, look, imagine you're a buyer of liquid hand soap. The number one selling brand probably in your set is soft soap, if not private label.
Right.
And if you were just to say, let's look at the numbers, if you had a whole shelf of soft soap or private label, you would actually lose sales because not every customer walking in wants to buy that. So the numbers, you can't just use top performing. So you have to find the right mix and where do they go on the shelf and what's actually going to drive incremental margin and velocity and traffic. And if you're looking at all these different lenses, the most important thing to do is, and some merchants will send out, you know, what they're focused on that year and the next reset ahead of time. If not, ask them at the beginning, you know, and really listen. I think the best salespeople that I've ever encountered are actually better listeners than better talkers.
Yep.
Obviously, I am not a good salesperson. So, so the,
All
so
good.
the, I think that the biggest takeaway I would say to your question is in getting into retail, it's asking yourself objectively a lot of these questions about your brand and your offering. And then it's finding a retail partner that, especially if you're brand new, is willing to take that risk and then being incredibly clear about the expectations of what success means. So is it velocity? Is it dollars? Is it Jim Roy? Is it, what is it? And then just being relentless about hitting those goals together.
Yeah.
So
Bruce and I
before
talk
we
about that all the time. Bruce, did you prep him on that?
no, but before we press on, I want to recap a few of the things David said
Yeah.
that we've talked about with other guests, and especially on the shows Tracy and I do solo. If you have a buyer that wants to put in a unique set of your emerging brand SKUs, fight that hard. Focus on your hero SKUs because that's where you have traction. That's where you have a story. David also said, understand what's important to your buyer. These are not secrets, but when Tracy and I interview buyers, they say, we got to the end of the meeting and they never asked what success looked like. They want you to be successful or they would not cut you in. As David said, it's a zero-sum game. Most people might have 16 feet for a category, let's say. So if they take out 6 of my SKUs to put in 6 of David's, that's a lot of work behind the scenes. That's not very sexy. And what that person, and to be a bit dramatic, that's a little bit of career risk because that buyer's manager might say, hey, Tracy, what are you doing? Right? So now David's point about velocity, is it units per store per week? Is it dollars per store per week? What does it take to get half of a shelf on an end cap? The buyers are always more concerned about their category performance than your brand performance. Also, we had a buyer at a very large retailer in Arkansas tell us they do not sell brands, they sell items. So your brand may be doing fine, but you still may have dog items. So be alert to these facts. So David, one quick follow up, and I believe you alluded to this because, initially when you guys were having your bumps in the road when you were starting, was the mission the interesting thing that got you guys some early shots and then you kind of had on the job learning? Or like, do retailers go like, the mission's totally cool, I'm in with it? Or are they like, what are you doing? Is your soap any good?
Depends on the buyer. But
Good. Tell us more.
yeah, so we have about 6 stakeholders that can be defined. One of them are our buyers. And back in 2013, 14, 15, when we really started getting into retail, like brick and mortar retail, it was just a drastically different message, right? Like everyone is coming to the line reviews saying like, yeah, we moisturize better and we have this ingredient and we have, this marketing campaign and we have this celebrity and, Dan and Dave come to your office and say, hey, together we can save lives. Like you have what, 4, 5, 6, depending how big the category, depending on the retailer, weeks of like line reviews. What sticks with you, right? Like that's why we got so much traction early on. It's because it was a trend. It was a trend for all the right reasons, and we were really good at selling, and we were really good at getting expansion and getting our toehold and all these. And we just didn't understand enough about the consumer and what it took to win when the only real estate you have is front of pack.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce, I know earlier you said like, hey, like slow it down and explain all the jargon. Front of pack is just the actual front of your package. And when you're competing, I think what's so interesting is like how also drastically things are changing right now. In terms of like the physical shelf within a category might have 300 items, 400, like in one's purview. Whereas like like if you look at Amazon or Walmart.com or Target.com or any of these .coms, you might see like 40 on the first page, maybe 50 on the first page, and you got to scroll a little bit. And then like social commerce, like TikTok shop and all this, you only see one. Like it's only one item that's actually being presented to you. So like how competitive you are in pricing drastically changes when you're only talking and the consumer can only see one item. So I do think that there's a lot of change that's going to take place. But essentially, to answer the question that you asked is like Soapbox and all the mistakes that we made was uh, we really didn't take the time to understand why a consumer would want to be a part of our mission. And why do they want to come and buy our brand? And if we would have spent more time on that instead of, well, let's scale this thing so we can do as much good as possible, I think we would have been far more successful early on.
So, folks, two other things David just touched on that Tracy and I have mentioned many times, and other guests, more importantly, have brought it up. The importance of getting your pricing right and knowing where you fit in your category and why. If you're going to be $9 more than the most expensive competitor, you better have a really good point of difference. And the other thing David said was the importance of your packaging. We have had many guests talk about the importance of packaging, and that goes from sales agents and brokers to agency people to brand founders to retailers. Your package is your 24/7 salesperson. And when that person's wheeling the cart down with two kids, or they only have 15 minutes before they have to get Timmy from baseball practice, they're not going to stop and interact with your package for 7 minutes. They aren't. So those are a couple of other really good points that David is now reinforcing. We've heard multiple times. So strong suggestion you take those to heart. Tracy?
Yep. So, David, you've mentioned a couple of speed bumps. Obviously, you've been wildly successful, but are there any other speed bumps along the way that you want to tell our audience about that you're like, man,
Well,
we shouldn't have done that, or man, I wish I had a do-over?
I mean, how long do you want this podcast to be?
Just, just give me, you've mentioned a couple. Give me one more that comes to mind.
Uh, um, I would for the entrepreneur right now, she, he, they listening to this, uh, take the time. Everyone's so anxious to go and rush and get on a shelf. Well, like, can you introduce me to this buyer or that buyer? Can you introduce me to these investors? And just like, actually, let's make sure that there's product market fit and that you really understand the consumer that is fueling that fit. Uh, and the more that I find early entrepreneurs who have that really dialed in, the faster they're successful.
Yeah.
So I cannot emphasize enough all of this. Like put yourself consistently with fresh eyes approaching your brand. Like, what does a consumer the first time interacting with Soapbox feel? And do they get it? And do they understand, right? And how is this different? And that's so difficult, right? Because we get trapped up in what we've built, especially us, right? I've been doing this for 15 years. This is a teenager of mine. So it's really hard to be objective sometimes, but I consistently, when I walk up to a shelf at any of the amazing retail partners that we have the privilege to partner with, and I'm seeing our brand for the first time, try to stop and be like, okay, if I were just to have seen this brand, what am I thinking about? And how am I interpreting it? And does it even get my attention? To Bruce's point earlier, we're all fighting for milliseconds of someone's attention. So I would stress that so hard to, anyone launching a brand or thinking about launching a brand or reshaping a brand. It's do you really spend time imagining as if you were a new consumer to your brand,
Mhm.
and walk through that whole journey.
Good point. Great advice. Great advice.
Yeah, great counsel there, David. So let's talk about, how have you driven awareness and trial for the Soapbox brand? You know, you just said this is a teenager of yours, so I'm sure you've evolved. So if you wanted to keep it closer in to what you're doing now, that might be helpful. And I also know, you know, so what marketing vehicles do you guys use? Why have you selected those? And I believe if I'm remembering our earlier discussion correctly, you guys utilize influencers. How do you select them?
Oh, oh, guys, you're asking on what campaigns do we do? What tools do we use? We have a very extensive tool chest as an emerging brand. We also spend like a drop in not even a bucket in the ocean compared to our competitors. Um, we really rely on the loyalty that our brand endears with our consumers in order to both afford to do the mission. Another really cool thing with our mission is that we donate off top line. We donate, we don't donate based on profit.
Nice.
So like, our grant writing every year is that of a small family office. And for those of you listeners, I was once one of you who don't know what a family office is. That's basically someone who has so much money that they need to hire an office of people to manage their money. Um, but I remember the first time one of our investors was like, "Yeah, let me introduce you to my family office." I was like, "Oh, you guys are in real estate?" He was like, "Ha ha ha, no." Um,
I mean,
but
Tracy has a family office. I'm still working toward it.
Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, public school. But
Yeah.
anyways, the long and short uh, of I think our journey has been assume you have a budget of zero marketing. Now, what do you do? So we've always been incredibly scrappy. Uh, I would say good marketing is looking at how are you touching that customer in 360 ways. And if you're on the brand side and you're thinking about, well, how do I elevate and how do I increase velocity at these major retailers? The closest you can get to on shelf, like the closest you can, and this is why packaging is so important. That's your best billboard. That's your biggest billboard. That might be your only billboard for a new customer. So the closest you can get to in-store marketing, shelf tags, end caps, sidekicks, PDQs, floor stands, pretty damn quick. But all of these things, right, are vehicles within the store that you need partnership from that retail partner. They also need to be able to implement these and have the budget and so on and so forth. Um, but but those are the most effective in terms of driving at the point of conversion. Um, on all of our .com partners, search. Oh my gosh, keyword search advertising. If you're not doing that as an emerging brand or a bigger brand, do it now. But I hope that bigger brands are all doing it. And we know for a fact that we're pretty much everyone in our category is. That's why it's so expensive sometimes. But I would say, as a marketer for a brand, you need to make some early decisions about how much is brand marketing and long tail marketing, and how much is I need this to work now and to convert now and performance marketing. We have 3 full-time people, a part of our lean and mean team that all they do is work with our influencers. And our goal, as the data has shown, is to work with a influencer again and again and again. And the more that their audience goes, okay, person X really actually likes this brand, even if it's, hashtag ad at the end. So especially in beauty, the importance of influencers cannot be overstated. It is today's modern TV advertising. And then I think that the biggest insight that I would leave your listeners is the way that you shoot content is very depending on the medium. So what do I mean by that? Super slick commercials don't convert on TikTok because they do not want to see super slick commercials on TikTok. They want to see something that feels real and authentic and shot in an iPhone. it it depends on the time and the place of where you show those type of things.
Hmm.
Um, OTT or over the top or connected TV or whatever acronym you want to use for like Hulu, Netflix ads, that type of stuff. Those are incredibly effective in building brand. But like, you got to be kidding yourself if you think someone's going to like stop their show, run over to their computer and buy right there.
No.
So there's a whole mix of um, what are the tools at my disposal. I'm a firm believer that there is no silver bullet. I also believe that items like SKUs that go viral, um, that's kind of scary sometimes, right? Because if you're a fad, right? Fads don't
Yeah.
stay around that long.
Nope.
No,
So,
no.
so, so for us, it's always just like, okay, what are we doing day in, day out in terms of building the amount of consumers that we have into the brand, as well as keeping our consumers loyal to the brand. And if you're adding more people than people are dropping out, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do that math.
Right.
So I think for us, there are numerous tools that on a daily basis we're utilizing to ensure the success and fast start with our retail partners. And then we continue to grow. We've been in Wegmans since 2018, and we had our biggest week ever with them like 3 weeks ago. And honestly, I thought that we had started to plateau, but Wegmans is a phenomenal partner, and we were able to partner with them in a couple different ways, uh, and really put ourselves in their shoes of like, okay, well, we don't want to discount the brand and we don't want to run too many promos, but like, what can we do in order to bring life to the set again, that also aligned with what our merchant wanted to see within her category. So it's honestly, I love this, and I
Yeah.
and I love the fact that each and every item that we sell is another one that we're able to donate, and that's made all possible by our customers.
That's great. So David, you alluded to this a little bit, but one of the things we always try to touch on, especially when we're fortunate to get a brand founder like you, you've talked about family offices, but what counsel would you give to an emerging brand founder when they're looking for their very first investor? I mean, you guys are, I know it's been a long journey, but you guys are cooking now. So that opens doors that a brand new person can't even find. So what would you say to someone who's like, boy, I think I have a little traction. I could really use $500,000. What would you say? Look, you need to network your brains out. You need to have your pitch on 3 pages. Make sure that these people are going to call you. They're not going to give you a check and say, whatever you want, David, just let me know when you need more. So what's your soundbite for that first money someone might think they're ready to take?
I have been super long-winded with all of my responses. I will try to be more concise with this one. And I think the best way that I can illustrate the importance of how critical it is to choose the right type of investors is to say it's like marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you really care about the brand that you're building, you are going to be married to this investor.
Yeah, we've heard that.
And even if it's just like, like they don't add too much value or too much experience, but they're putting their money in. The other thing that is really important to early founders is understand that there's two major levers in any financial transaction with a startup, and that is control and ownership. So, they could be, after like post valuation owning 20%, but they could essentially control the board
Mhm.
and therefore control you.
Mm.
So one of my favorite investors, Andy from Loft Partners, is like, I'll give you whatever valuation you want as long as you accept whatever term sheet I give. Uh, and essentially, it just comes down to, well, do they have a liquidation pref, and do they have blocking rights, and how do they treat common, and are founders still uncommon, and are there ratchet positions, are there anti-dilution provisions, are there all these type of things, and these terms may sound scary, and honestly they should. right? Like I've seen so many founders with a lot of passion put in years into something, and then they end up unemployed with very
Yep.
little to show for them.
Well,
So
the other thing, David, that you're saying is, and Andy's a friend of the show. He has been on. The other thing we've heard, it'll be interesting, just even a head nod's fine, is make sure you're aligned on like what the goal is. You know, it's a whole different investor if David's goal is to leave the business to his children one day. That's one set of investors. I'm not sure I've met many of those that have an endless timeline. And then others, you know, they're like, David, what's your timeline? We're looking for 5 years. And it's like, okay, that's an acceptable. Yeah, infinite is usually not a word investors want to hear.
100%.
Yeah.
Like
All right.
I think the other thing is just like how an investor is going to do due diligence on you, good investors sitting are wanting to hear you ask for diligence on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then really good investors are going to introduce you to not the ones that were all successful, but the ones that didn't work out.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, it's really easy when everyone's making money, right? Like you don't have to focus too much about how the pie is divided when everyone's going to have an outsized return.
Yeah. I think the
Talk to the
other,
ones where things went south.
yep.
Sorry, Bruce.
No, it's my fault. The other thing that we've heard a lot is there seems to be when you get into people like Loft Partners and people that are of that ilk, some just want to see your plan and your numbers. You know, it's like I could care less if I really like David. And then the other people want to just kind of have lunch somewhere and see if there's like a good feel. Because a mistake Tracy and I hear a lot, David, is, God, I had no idea my investor would have so many questions and call me all the time. And, you know, it's like, unless you have endless cash, you know, most people keep track of where it's gone, why it went there, and when they can expect it to come home to mommy. All right. So, David, we are rounding third and headed for home. Tracy.
Yep. So tell us, David, about your who's had the greatest influence on your career and why.
Oh,
No need to name any names, but just tell us, like, what did this person do that has really stuck with you after all this time?
there's a lot. There's a lot that immediately, come to mind. First, the team. I get to work next to and alongside and roll up my sleeves with brilliant, passionate, incredibly hardworking people each and every day. And that is the way that I'm a very big fan of servant leadership, and I hope that I do more to empower than demand our team. I hope I can fulfill those words. In terms of
Well,
people in the industry, John Rapogle's been phenomenal. John Rapogle's the former CEO of Seventh Generation, and before that, he was Burt's Bees, and now he runs One Better Ventures and sits on a bunch of boards. But he's been a long time advisor and friend. His whole team has just been phenomenal. Nick and Mike and Tim from Whipstitch Capital, we've been friends and close with them since like 2015. They met us in the early days of going to Expo East and Expo West, and they saw what we saw in terms of how big this could get. Craig Dubinsky and I have been super close friends, and I think one of the things that is so inspirational about Craig is he poured his whole heart and determination into ensuring that Hello was a success. And I hope I'm not crossing any. I know that he's told this story publicly, but I hope that I'm not taking it away from him. He tells about this one line review after they launched charcoal toothpaste of one of his retail partners being like, Craig, I have 300 items in my oral care set. Your item number 3 is ranked 300th, meaning it's dead last. Item number 2 is like 295, and I probably have the numbers wrong. And he's like, and item number 1, your charcoal toothpaste is number 1. And I thought, when so many people, told him, hey, maybe this ain't gonna work out, he just doubled down and refused to give up, and then had a amazing outcome with Colgate Palmolive, and then became the head of innovation at Colgate Palmolive. And then he just was like, this is boring. and decided to start Happy. So I think just a consummate entrepreneur and someone who can show that even when it gets really dark, you have to double down and believe in yourself and continue to push on. And then I think there's a bunch of people in the industry, retail partners that I just love working with. I love Dwight, Mike, Loren over at Wegmans, and they've just been such a phenomenal partner, and all of our Walmart buyers and all of our Target buyers, all of our Sally Beauty team. We've just been so incredibly lucky to have the amount of success that we've had within Sally Beauty. We're their number one performing brand outside of private label brands that they own and operate. So it's just, there's so many people over the years, and I say this to early entrepreneurs that I always try to ensure that there's time on my calendar just to talk with new entrepreneurs, because there's not hundreds of people, there's thousands of people who took the time to talk to us, and I just want to pay it forward and share all the things that we messed up on.
Well, and that's it. It's very interesting to hear that, because most of the people Tracy and I interview, it's not just one person. And if it is, it's usually a mom or a dad. But it's amazing when you take inventory of all those people when none of us knew anything about anything, that either gave us time or saw a flicker of hope. And they're like, you know what? Bruce isn't a complete knucklehead, so I'm going to give him this shot somewhere. All right, David. So here's our last topic, and this one is vital. Who is your favorite sports team, band, or brand? And you can't say Soapbox. And why do you support them?
Well, I want to just say one quick thing. I would not be who I am without my family, or my wife, or my son, and especially my mom and dad. So when you were saying that, I was like, I was focusing mostly on consumer, but like, I like to say this often, I am who I am because of my parents.
We all
I
are.
just, yeah, but I mean, like, I lucked out, as Warren Buffett often says, I won the ovarian lottery. Like, I know sincerely, like, both my mom and dad are just phenomenal human beings, and I hope to be half the people they are. Favorite, I'm gonna go with favorite brand. Uh, I'm one of those guys that can really get fascinated with a brand, and want to like dive in and explore how they came about. I think what Disney has been able to do over the years is just mind-boggling. Like, to create these otherworld experiences where now adults, even without children, want to go back to children's theme parks and relive those memories,
Right.
is like, that's the power of brand. Like, you've created a consumer experience that people are willing to shell out a lot of money, uh, and they want to come and relive those experiences again and again and again. And I think that's just how they think about wrapping around a ride into a movie, and then that into toys, and then that into TV shows, and evergreening that content. Um, I think Bob Iger is possibly one of the smartest consumer thinkers, period. And I think most people talk about Nike or Apple or all these other uh, whatever it might be. But I just consistently I think what Disney has done from a brand perspective is just wild.
Well, it's hard to argue with that logic. And so how can people get in touch with you, David, to either ask you a question or learn more about Soapbox? And then we'll let you get back to working on the Buzz Lightyear Soapbox promo.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Disney, if you hear this, we'd love to be your hotel amenity. So the first and foremost, for all your listeners who are still here and they're like, this shampoo guy won't shut up. We'd love to give all of you guys a discount, especially if you're new to the brand. So if you just do Road to Retail with the number 2, 20%. Anyone coming to our site as a first-time buyer gets that off. So it's just soapbox.co. And then my email is just david@soapbox.co. So if anyone here is just like, hey, that guy sounded like he knows what he's talking about, I can try my best to put you in touch with someone who actually does. But it's been such an honor, like talking to you guys and sharing our story and our mission.
You've been great, man.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time and also for the humility to not only focus on the victory laps, but tell us about the fastballs that went off your helmet and, hit by pitch. Anyway, you were fantastic. All right, Tracy, the big finish.
The big finish. Thank you again, David. And one thing I want to say at the end, you mentioned servant leadership, and I just applaud you for that. And there's no doubt in my mind that that's what you are. So anyway, audience, thanks for joining us today. Great episode. Make sure you take a listen. Continue to follow us on LinkedIn. We post every Tuesday. And then also follow us on Spotify, as well as Apple, wherever you get your podcast, in those two places. And thank you again, David. Great to see you, Bruce. And also we have a website, www.road2retail.com. So check us out.
Good luck out there, folks, and go get that Soapbox Road to Retail promo David talked about.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.